Welcome back, it's me, Lou. I'm here for another action figure unboxing and review, and today we are jumping into the far dystopian future, into the world of the Age of Apocalypse. And more specifically, we're taking a look at the new Marvel Legends Rogue, and this represents Rogue during that alternate time period. So if you're unfamiliar with the Age of Apocalypse, way back in 1995, Marvel Comics had a very specific X-Men event entitled The Age of Apocalypse. In that story, the villain Apocalypse has kind of hurled the world into this very dark, post-apocalyptic, dystopian kind of future. And the mutants are kind of like on the fringe of survival. The X-Men being led by Magneto and Rogue. They're trying to continue Professor X's dream where humans and mutants could coexist peacefully. And I believe Magneto and Rogue, they even have a child who they name after Professor X. Their child's named Charles. So this represents that very specific version of Rogue. This is not the Rogue that, is currently appearing in the Marvel Comics. This is the alternate reality one. On the side of the box, I believe we have some comic book art illustrated by artist David Nakayama. It's really well done. On the back, we have a brief bio of Rogue. Rogue moves her way up the ranks of Magneto's X-Men, eventually leading a team of mutants to prevent the culling of humankind. Other figures available in this wave are Magneto. I've done a review on him, so look for that. Here's Rogue, Cyclops, Sabretooth, Shadowcat, aka Kitty Pryde, Iceman, and we also have Legion. So I believe Legion is the only character that does not represent the Age of Apocalypse. I just think this is this standard normal Legion, aka David, Professor X's son. So I bought this figure, I don't know, maybe like a month or two ago. It's just now that I'm getting around to reviewing it. I've seen these figures in the wild. Some of them are hard to find. Like, I've seen Cyclops. He's pretty easy to find. Sabretooth, kind of difficult. Shadowcat's kind of difficult. I've seen Legion. And Magneto, I just saw him the one time when I purchased them. The Build-A-Figure is Colossus. You need at least these 6 figures to complete him. And he looks great. I really want this. Much like I stated in the Magneto review, as cool as these figures look, if anything, they make me more nostalgic for the original figures produced by Toy Biz. And at least for me anyways, just because of being sentimental, I think I'd rather have the original Toy Biz figures than the newer ones. But this Colossus here looks awesome. I really want that. Rogue looks beautiful, framed in the window. You have a clear view of the additional accessories for the Build-A-Figure pieces. She comes with 2 extra hands, which are fists. And let's get her out. Okay, so first impressions of Rogue while she's still in the tray. Pleasantly surprised. I'm really glad they kept certain key features about her original costume and kept them in line with this action figure. Like, for one, when I think of Age of Apocalypse and I think of that mid to late 90s era, one thing I do remember is Rogue having those giant moon boots. And it's cool that they kind of gave her the big moon boots right here. I'm glad they just didn't, reuse another figure's legs or whatever. It's very cool that they gave her the very specific mold for these giant feet. I think that looks great. It's very apropos to like the mid 90s. She even has the crazy poof of hair at the top. If anything, I do think they could have done a better job on her facial expression. It's just very subdued. I kind of wish it was a little bit more. It looks too neutral for me. For me, it's like give her a little bit more emotion. But it is sculpted really well, and the paint application looks great. This is, for the most part, this looks to be like a very unique mold, especially with the sleeves, the boots, as I pointed out. I might have an issue with the cuffs here on the wrists, but otherwise I think it looks like an amazing figure. Or if you're a nerd, an astonishing figure, because she came from the Astonishing X-Men comic book. Alright, in terms of closer look at the figure, the sculpting is really well done. I love the hair. It's kind of crazy because it almost looks like she has like a giant dollop of like whipped cream on top of her hair. If you don't, if you're unfamiliar with the character having, the two different colored hairs. It's not like I believe this isn't a stark white either. It looks like to be an off-white. I kind of like how her flare is flowing forward, but at the same time, I kind of wish they did a better job so it kind of drapes over her body a little bit better. I don't like how it's gappy underneath here, and it looks like it's just kind of like floating. I mean, you could argue that maybe it's blowing in the wind, but I would have preferred it better if it was actually in contact with her body here and flowing. But at the same time, I think that allows for, mobility, so she can actually like turn her head around, without the hair getting in the way. But the neck also just looks a little too long, maybe. But there could be some pros to that, and we'll talk about that in a second. I love the sculpting on the sleeves. I like how they billow out, towards the elbows, and the folds just kind of like drape over each other. Love these boots. The boots are great. And much like a lot of characters in the 90s, she has like that strap with the pouches on her leg. Yeah, so really well done. Let's see if we get a closer look at her face. Yeah, so there's her face. As much as I love the hair, it almost feels a little bit overkill because it casts such a big shadow over her face. It's almost like one of those giant winter like snow caps that has that big brim in the front. It kind of like overshadows her face, so you kind of lose all that detail with the shadow casted over it. Especially since her face is so well sculpted. Yeah, so it's great. In terms of articulation, her head rotates. And this is what I love. Since her neck is so long, and because of the design on her neck, not only is it on a ball joint, but it's also on a hinge. So it can allow her to look pretty far down. So she could count her toes. It could allow for her to look up. Let me see how far I could bend this back. Yeah, so this is great. She can actually move her head all the way back. So if you wanted to, especially with her ab crunch here, you could arch her back enough. And then you could get her into like a flying pose, which is nice. I always appreciate it when they take the time out to give that extra range of motion in the articulation, so you can like recreate like something that character can actually do. Like Ro can actually fly. So it's cool that you can actually get her in a true to form flying pose. So I really dig that. Her arms rotate. The little kind of like Magneto like thing collar or whatever it is. It's oh, I just noticed this just now. It's actually pegged in. So there's a socket and there's a peg on the back. If you find it floating around too much, you might just want to dab a bit of super glue in there and just put it into place so it stays permanently. Because it will kind of ride up if you move the arms around. Her arms rotate. They go. Let me move the neck back. They go outwards. She has a swivel at the elbow, so she has an elbow swivel, not a bicep. She only has a single jointed elbow, so she doesn't have a whole lot of movement in her elbows, and for some reason it's really tight. Doesn't want to bend. And this is the one thing I hate about a lot of Marvel Legends figures. So this here is not supposed to represent any. It's not like a wristband. This is actually supposed to be the cuff of the glove. But there's always that issue about it, especially with like the Cyclops figures, where it always kind of floats around, never stays in place. So you kind of want to drape this down so it looks like it's attached to her glove, not that it's part of her wrist. She has a cut below her chest line, which allows for mid-torso swivel, allows her to crunch, and as we saw earlier, arch back. Nicely shaped butt. She could kick forward. She has a she has a thigh cut, so she could swivel at the thigh. It looks like she has double jointed knees, and the pins are hidden, so it's a really clean look. I want to say I think she has a boot swivel. Let me take a look. Nah, her legs looks like she doesn't have a boot swivel. It's just one solid piece, but she does have ankle articulation. So yeah, very solid figure. Let's take a look at the comic book version of her to see how accurate it is. So, you know, this character debuted in 1995, and since then there's been different artists that would lend their different interpretations of the character. So I'm not sure if this represents any one specific artist's look of Age of Apocalypse Rogue, or if it's just maybe like an amalgamation of all the different designs. But I do have some artwork here we could compare it to as a point of reference. So early on, and I want to say this might have been, I can't remember if this is Age of Apocalypse 1 or if this is Astonishing X-Men issue 1. But in her early appearance, here's Rogue next to Blink. And as you can see here, Rogue's, she's wearing a cape. So early on in the series, she's wearing a cape. And the cape does change its color. Initially, it was yellow. And then later on, I believe in like another issue, it might have been blue. So the cape is almost essentially like Magneto's cape. Hence, that's why she has this kind of like studded collar. It's very much in line with Magneto's cape and collar. And they're a couple, so that since they're a couple, you know, having the similar design elements kind of pulls them together. So that's one thing I've noticed, is that the original design had the cape, but there were the two colors. There was the yellow and then later blue. And also, speaking of Age of Apocalypse, I just remembered we did get a Blink figure, and then we also have, I think we got this very specific Sunfire one. We haven't gotten an Age of Apocalypse Gambit yet, which is right there. So later on in Age of Apocalypse, Rogue kind of lost the cape, and then I believe this was drawn by artist Joe Maduria. And yeah, this figure does a great job of just recreating this look. You know, it's pretty spot on in my opinion. You know, it's possible this was probably one of the illustrations they used as a reference point when they designed this figure. Yeah, so everything's there. You know, the hair, the studded collar, the big sleeves, the moon boots, the strap. Yeah, this is a very true to the original design. So for me, if I had to rate this figure numerically, I want to give it an 8 to an 8.5. You know, I think for me, most of the reason is because it does a great job of this capturing the original design of the character. It really looks like they did not take any embellishments and, you know, add anything different. It looks like the character, like how she was actually represented back in 1995. I would have appreciated if they gave her a cape accessory at least, but, you know, for what we're getting, it's spot on to this. The articulation's nice. I love the fact that her neck's like highly articulated and she can actually get into like a real flight pose. For me, that's a big plus. So yeah, it's a definite must purchase in my opinion. But if you're unfamiliar with the Age of Apocalypse and you just kind of want to stick with the more iconic looks of the character, you know, you might just be happy with, you know, the normal Marvel Legends Rogue figure. You know, this is very much inspired by the early 90s Rogue, the initial one designed by Jim Lee, with the leather coat over her uniform. You know, outside of I think Rogue's like early looks in the 80s, I think this is the one that's kind of like left the biggest impression in people's heads. So yeah, I mean, this is a great figure. Love this one a lot. As you can see here, they're roughly about the same size. Yeah, they're really cool. I dig this one. The yellows are different. This one's a little bit more yellow-orange. This one's a little bit more just like lemon yellow. The greens here, this is a little bit more of a metallic green. And this one's just more of like a plastic green. Yeah, so both great figures. You know, like I said, if you're more into like the 90s X-Men or just a little bit more of an iconic rogue look, you might just opt for this one. But if you're like me, if you grew up during this time period, or you're a big fan of the Age of Apocalypse, or if you just want a different version of Rogue, you know, this is worth the purchase in my opinion. Alright, so let's wrap this video up. Once again, my name is Lou. Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you are a returning viewer or subscriber, thank you so much for your continued likes, comments, and support. I greatly appreciate it. So until the next video, be safe, take care of yourself, and most importantly, be happy. And I'll talk to you later.